I'm Gold Derby News and Features Editor Ray Richmond, and I'm welcoming Valerie, Faris, and Jonathan Dayton, the team that directed 3 episodes of the 7-time Emmy-nominated FX limited series Fleishman Is in Trouble, to our Gold Derby Meet the Emmy nominees TV Directors panel. Valerie and Jonathan, you both received Emmy nominations for directing episode 7, Me Time. Talk about what it was like working with first-time showrunner Taffy Brodesser-Akner, who had adopted her novel, and from all indications is quite the force of nature. First you, Valerie.
Perhaps even better. Yeah, she is great. I mean, she's amazing. We loved her scripts, and it was a first time for her. So, limited series, alone are a challenge, just logistically and kind of going so quickly into what's essentially
an 8 or 9 hour movie.
Yeah. But we loved her, and she was game, and
she also mentioned a couple times a day that she'd never done this before. So, she was very humble about the fact that everyone on the set was more experienced than her. And I think because of that, she was really open to learning and, listening to people, and luckily, I think we had a really great team.
And Sarah Timberman, was very involved, and Susanna Grant. So there was a brain trust there that made it all work. But her
talent, I mean, you stole our description of her, which is force of nature. She's just so completely, I don't know if she sleeps, but she was writing scripts as we were prepping and then rewriting them, and just handling all, and raising a family at the same time. I mean, just kind of she just seemed to have endless energy for this, and she was so excited about it. I mean, she broke into tears many times.
Of joy.
Yeah,
of joy.
Joy of, it's just kind of incredulous that the whole thing was happening. And so it made it kind of fun, because not that we've done limited series a lot, but it made it seem sort of like we're doing it for the first, all of it for the first time. So that was sort of fun.
Nice job making your showrunner cry. No, I can see actually from watching the series why you'd submit the 7th episode, Valerie and Jonathan, for Emmy consideration. I mean, one is these creative flashbacks and flash forwards that jump wildly through time. Really interesting. Another is how it's such an acting tour de force, obviously, for Claire Danes.
Yeah. She is amazing. And, I don't really feel like we can take credit for her performance. She just is such a pro and so surprising. And, we would talk about something and kind of let her go. And then for the most part, that's just what you do. You just watch her and enjoy what she's doing. And, I think we all were on the same page about what was happening for the character and what she was going through. And,
it was an intimidating episode. I mean, we shot the show in order, or at least our episode. So we did 1, 3, and then 7. And 7 was this thing on the horizon that was, I think, intimidating to all of us. But Claire does her homework, and she always comes very prepared and is really researched, the life and the kind of challenges of her characters. And so, it was really about creating a supportive environment where she could do her work and know, there were certain times where, our goal was to try and do something in 1 take or 2 takes at the most, to really protect her. So she knew she could give it her all and feel comfortable that we were going to get it.
Like she, on this one scene where she has to do this kind of primal scream, we just knew that we had more stuff to shoot after that. But we also knew that if we wore her out on that and tried to do too many of them, it would sort of ruin the second half of the day. So we said, let's do it in 1 take. And we had no idea what she would kind of do with it. We didn't practice or rehearse it at all. And then she did this scream that lasted, it felt like it lasted 5 minutes. I don't know how she did it, but she just kind of blew everyone that was on the set just was kind of silenced by it. It was so incredible. And, she just, she deserves so much credit for this. And, the other thing I think about in these episodes, and in 7 particularly, just Lizzie Kaplan also, I think she has, her voiceover just is, it takes you through all these episodes in a way that I think it's because she felt the material, that she was saying it as if she was writing it as she's thinking of it as she's speaking it. And there's just something about her performance that I think you can't, it contributes so much to these episodes. So, I mean, our cast in general, but Lizzie and Claire in episode 7, I think are just, they just do such an incredible job. So we were lucky.
Intimidating, I can see what you mean about the, seeing episode 7 down the road and, oh, wow, that's going to be interesting when we hit that. Because I mean, it's so creatively rich and emotionally complex, and the point of view, it's just such a shift. That's got to be kind of a challenge as directors too.
It is, and we had developed a kind of visual motif early in episode 1, where we would turn the world upside down, and but we hadn't really thought through how that language would be used in each episode. But as we came to episode 7, it really, there were a couple of really great moments where that approach really supported the moment,
feelings and
so but it's a different animal, these.
And I think part of the challenge too was tracking her through the other episodes, even the ones that we weren't directing. And and I think that there's always this concern, are we just making her too much of a villain early on, and trying to balance that. But I think that was something we worked closely with Taffy on. She was very clear, like, I don't we don't need to make her sympathetic. And she didn't, even in episode 7, she was still the same character, but you were just getting to see her experience. It wasn't as suddenly she became, there was this personality change. So just, I think, calibrating that throughout the whole season, which is tricky when you're, it's different than a movie, because you're having to kind of do these handoffs with other directors. But it was great to have partners in Bob Puccini and Sherry Berman. But, so that kind of collaboration, I felt like we had a really good kind of shared sensibility and approach to the whole series. So I guess it worked. I don't know.
Oh, no, it worked phenomenally well. But one thing I need to ask is about the difficulties that might crop up being a married couple who work together as directors on sets. I mean, do you have like certain lines you won't cross with each other, where you sort of say, we'll talk about this, does anything like that ever happen?
We try to get all that stuff out of the way before we get to set, but we don't really fight on set ever.
The key is to really love the material and love our cast, and both those things were really true with this project.
And I think most of the fights and most of the challenges, so many of them happen in prep, when it's just the two of us sitting, thinking about how we're going to shoot something. We argue a lot, but
our children, often we get nervous when we'd be driving in the car talking about something.
This is before, not anymore.
But they would think we would be fighting, but we were actually just talking about work and
we'd always say
how we would do something.
Yeah, we're not fighting. It's just we're discussing, and I think they figured it out finally. But they usually, I mean, we do have kind of a blurry line between our personal lives and our work lives. And I guess that's why we have to behave well in both worlds. You know, if we screw up in our work lives, it really messes with our personal lives. So we try to be good to each other in both,
For every
in
reason.
both ventures.
You had mentioned, that the secret is loving the material. I thought you were going to say loving each other.
Oh,
Well, that's a given.
No,
That never changes.
yeah. But no, it is true though. Like we don't ever do anything unless we both feel equally, drawn to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say. I think that's actually a good place for us to wrap.
Right.
Fleishman Is in Trouble currently streams on Hulu. Valerie, Faris, and Jonathan Dayton, congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you.
Best of luck at the forthcoming Emmys, and thanks for joining us at Gold Derby.
Thank you.
Take care.
I'm Gold Derby News and Features editor Ray Richmond, and I'm welcoming Brett Morgen, who directed the wildly inventive HBO David Bowie musical documentary film Moonage Daydream, to our Gold Derby Meet the Emmy nominees TV directors panel. Brett, Moonage Daydream is such an ambitious movie and so different from any musical doc I've ever seen, which I know is intentional on your part. Talk about your unconventional approach that's less biographical and more about having an experience with the artist and why you decided to go that route.
Well, I think that biography, particularly sort of as it's evolved today, is biographical documentary often follows a kind of Wikipedia kind of hit all the sort of major moments of someone's life. And, I just felt that these dates and facts don't really give you much insight into a subject. And in working in a visual and oral medium, facts and, don't really lend themselves to me to sort of a cinematic universe, so to speak. So I wanted to sort of find a different way to present David's story that was less biographical, but had the same goal of kind of arriving at a truth. And with Moonage Daydream, what it was really trying to do is kind of capture this sort of force, this sort of intangible energy that is David Bowie.
This was the first film about and featuring David to be authorized by his estate. So obviously they had incredible trust in you going in. What do you attribute that to?
Well, I had met with David in 2007 to pitch him a sort of hybrid nonfiction project, and his executor had been in the room. And so I think that really helped, that whatever David had a chance to meet me and whatever he shared with his executor. I think more importantly, David had told his estate that he never really wanted his work to be part of a sort of talking head documentary. By the way, I didn't know this until recently, that his feeling was in talking head documentaries, the talking heads experts tend to own the history and the truth. And he didn't really want to participate in that sort of endeavor. So when I approached the estate and said I was not interested in that type of film, I was interested more in a kind of artistic endeavor, it really seemed to resonate with them. And honestly, the only dictate that I was given was that David is not here to authorize the work, so it can't be Bowie on Bowie, it has to be Morgen on Bowie. And that was the greatest gift that anyone could have provided me, because in essence, they were allowing me to create an art project. It was, and it really came to fruition as an arts project. But
it really comes across that way too.
Yeah, I think partially it's funny being on a panel, not funny, with TV directing and having directed episodic and knowing the time this was Moonage Daydream was 7 years, and ostensibly for the first 5.5 years I was by myself as producer, writer, director, editor, which was really, that was again its own sort of adventure that has its own complications, but in this context, in trying to create a kind of again, arts and crafts project, for lack of a better word, it helped that it was really sort of created as a kind of, David's media, myself for years, just kind of, particularly during the pandemic, just kind of marinating.
Yeah, I wanted to actually address that adventure, Brett. The Bowie archive had something like 5 million stills and films and dubs and assets to pour through over 2 years. And I hear it was so voluminous and laborious a task that it literally gave you a heart attack.
Well, truth be told, I had my heart attack as that media was being processed. So the heart attack was the result of my entire career, well, whatever, but a bunch of stuff. What was really frightening, if you can imagine, is being like coming out of a coma and facing 5 million assets by yourself, and that sort of having to kind of figure out how to create this type of story, and which and having the there was definitely a part of making the film where when you're by yourself, there's a reason we collaborate. You just, there was nothing to bounce ideas off. So it was definitely a challenge. But I came out of the hospital and almost immediately immersed myself in David's interviews and his media. And I fortunately wasn't sure yet what the story I was going to tell was going to be. And as I'm listening to David in this very vulnerable state, I just felt like he was giving me a kind of roadmap on how I can lead a more balanced life in the arts. And before I knew it, that became the film. It was basically like David sort of guiding me and me trying to transmit that through. And I remember one of the strangest experiences was I was at the premiere of the film at Cannes last year, and there's 2,500 people in the crowd. And I had this really strange feeling that I forgot everything about assembling it. I forgot that I created it. And I just felt that I was in a room alone with David, and he was talking directly to me as if this message, it wasn't applicable out elsewhere. And the fact that it was able to translate to audiences and go outside my limited sphere has been really exhilarating.
So facing 2 years of tackling these assets was your reward for surviving your heart attack.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was. I mean, listen, I don't think, respectfully to my peers, I don't think there's a better assignment one can have than to spend, years of your life immersed in the art and music and imagery of David Bowie. I mean, it was, during the screening process in particular for 2 years where I just had to absorb, it was the greatest experience.
And film is just so kaleidoscopic and beautifully rendered. I'm sure you've thought about this a lot, Brett, but how do you think Bowie himself would react to this?
Well, I never asked myself that with when I finish these films. It's a little too daunting. I get asked that, what would Kurt think of Montage of Heck, and what would David? I can't say. All I can say is that the film was created very much in the spirit of David's creations, and that I, for years researched, and he was very articulate about his process. So, we used oblique strategy cards. I mean, they were right on my Avid. I used them throughout the process. When I got to have an opportunity to collaborate with others, particularly my incredible sound team and colorist, I would share these ideas. And, the first conversations were like, listen, in order for this to work, we all have to be out of our comfort zones. The sound team who, they all won Oscars for Bohemian. They're so experienced, that's to ask them at 60 years old to, we're going to do this. But it wasn't to take a left field approach to be left field. It was what David had shared with me, which is it's not the destination, it's the process. And it's about, making each day as exciting and adventurous as we can be creatively, and to create an environment that's conducive for these sort of adventures. And I was, again, blessed that everyone kind of came on board this journey.
Well, I think actually we're going to wrap there. Moonage Daydream currently streams on Max. Brett Morgen, congratulations on your 4 nominations for the film. Best of luck at the forthcoming Emmys. And thanks for joining us at Gold Derby.
Thanks so much.
I'm Gold Derby News and Features Editor Ray Richmond, and I'm welcoming Declan Lowney, who directed what appears to be the final episode of Apple TV Plus's Ted Lasso, to our Gold Derby Meet the Emmy Nominees TV Directors panel. Declan, as someone who's done a lot of work on Ted Lasso, I suppose it's impossible to be objective, but what do you believe explains this show's runaway, almost obsessive popularity with viewers, critics, and the TV Academy alike?
I think in studying why Ted Lasso has been so successful, Ray, I think it's important to go back to when Ted Lasso arrived. And I think Ted Lasso arrived when the world was in a pretty terrible state. We were just in the middle of our first lockdown, weren't we? We were just coming out. And I know everybody needed the equivalent of a weighted blanket as some sort of a hug. And I think Ted Lasso went a long way toward providing that. It was also a new sort of comedy, Comedy could be a bit nasty sometimes, can't it? There are jibes at people are the butt of jokes. And I think Ted Lasso arrived with a comedy that was somehow fresher and somehow more compassionate and more willing to see people's flaws and not laugh at them. So I think all those things came together, and just the timing of it, I think it just arrived at a really important time for us.
A kinder, gentler comedy. You recently said on a podcast, and I quote, "When you're directing a TV show, there's always a godlike figure standing behind you in the background with overall guidance." In the case of Ted Lasso, is that godlike figure named Jason Sudeikis?
Yeah.
And how hands-on is he when you're directing?
Jason Sudeikis could certainly be a godlike presence. Jason will be in front of the camera, however, most of the time. So he's depending on you to be him behind you as well. It's a tough, being the showrunner and being in the show is a tough call, and Jason handles that extremely well. But he is a guy who has a very fixed view on how this show should look and feel, and he's generally pretty spot on with his observations. He knows what he wants, and that makes it exciting as well, because you've got somebody saying, here's why it's got to be the way it is, rather than just here's the way it's got to be. So that's always brilliant work. Going to work on that show was a bit like having an education film almost every day. Every day you went to work.
I'll bet. Let's talk about the final episode of season 3 that you were nominated for, So Long, Farewell, which we're presuming is the series finale as well. What a whirlwind of emotions that had to call up, Declan, not just for you, but for everyone on that set.
Yes, I mean, So Long, Farewell was the title, and it was so long, and it was farewell because it was 73 minutes, and that made it long, and it was the last one, so there's the farewell. But yes, that's 34 episodes in, so there's a lot of stories to wrap up, and that's why the show had to be quite so long. But I know Jason is somebody who always feels people aren't going to complain about it being 10 minutes too long. The fans love it and they love to spend more time with the characters, and let's try and wrap stories up properly instead of rushing through it.
I was wishing we'd go on even longer. I hadn't realized that much time had passed by the end, actually.
Steady on, Ray, because we didn't all want to keep shooting.
No. I imagine if the fans had their way, you'd still be shooting.
Yes.
There's so many poignant moments scattered throughout that episode, so many farewells and elements of closure. I mean, as a director, are you concerned at all with making sure things moved along toward the conclusion at a steady pace? That had to be quite the challenge.
Yeah, that's a difficult one, because you have to let things take as long as they take. And the nature of Ted Lasso is that some of the show is written as it goes on, and so you think you've got a 1-page scene today, but by the time you get there in the morning, it's become a 2.5 or a 3-page scene, because Jason's felt the need to put more dialogue and more stuff in to try and wrap up stories. And so you shoot it long, and then we try and condense it down in the edit. But a lot of stuff is the length it is because that's how long it took. And particularly the scene that for me brings closure for a lot of people was the scene in the locker room at halftime, when Ted gives them a very short speech about going back out and being the best versions of themselves, and how, we're down 2-1 or whatever, but we could still do it. And he says, anybody got anything else to say? And Sam Obasanya reaches into his locker and takes a piece of yellow paper and puts it on the desk. And then Jamie Tart takes out a piece, and suddenly people start to take out these yellow pieces of paper, and we realize they've all got a piece of the Believe sign that was torn up way back at the start of season 2. And everybody's held on to a piece, and people have put them, Isaac's got his tucked under his armband, somebody else has it in their shin pad. Jamie Tars, I think, has his in the book that Ted gave him in episode 3 back in season 1, the book that meant nothing to him. So it's beautiful to see that everybody has invested so much in their piece of paper, and when they put all the piece of paper back together on the table in the middle of the room, and we look down, and then they start to rearrange them into the Believe poster. And it's a beautiful moment, that. But what I love particularly is when everyone's standing around looking down at it, and they bend down to start moving the piece of paper around. You've got this huge group of 25 people around this table in the middle of the room. They all bend down, but the only 2 people left standing are Ted and Nate, opposite each other. And so there's a beautiful moment between the 2 of them where they just exchange look. And we know by then, Ted has completely forgiven Nate. It is all okay. And Nate feels at home again to be back in Richmond. It's a beautiful moment, but I just love that all the heads dip down, and you're just left with the 2 guys giving each other the eyes across the table.
And that moment really is indicative of how that whole Believe motif extends way beyond sports into life. And I think that's in a lot of ways what people were responding to with Ted Lasso. As a freelance director on a series like Ted Lasso, isn't it more or less like you're making less a matter of making your own imprint and more of don't screw up the style and tone we've already established here?
I think it is don't screw up the tone and style we've already established. And, particularly if you haven't been around for the first few episodes, when those directors are setting the tone and the style, and your job is, to deliver what the show has managed to succeed at by then, which is to deliver that show that they all, that people know and love. But that's not to say a director can't come in and go, oh, I had this idea for, how about if we did this? Or how about if we tried that? And there's always room. Jason's always keen for directors to explore or to experiment, as long as you're not going crazy and going, let's do it all in one shot. And that's, within reasons, I think there's room for directors to have their own input. But a big part of what you're bringing is your ability to get it done on time and to get it done in a way that keeps everybody happy. It's a very, very happy team. That show, and I think that's really important, that energy and that dynamic and that relationship between the crew and the director and the actors, all that stuff is really important on any show, but particularly here because it is a team effort.
What was the best thing for you about being a part of this show and that team, Declan? Did it make you more popular at parties?
Ted Lasso certainly added enormously to my social cachet, I would say. It was an amazing experience for somebody who's not, I've only done a bunch of American TV shows before this. So for somebody who's a slightly outsider wanting to try and break in here, it was it opened a huge amount of doors for me. And it was very important to understand how the show worked and understand the dynamics of the writers, execs, how that works. The best part of it was being very much part of the team. You know, it is such a team effort. When we make shows in the UK, you usually, you know, with comedy, we make sixes. So one director is hired and creates and makes and directs all six. And you feel part of the ownership. And I guess American TV, it is a little harder for directors perhaps to feel the same sense of ownership because you're visiting, it's a bit like a conveyor belt. But I did feel very at home and I did feel very part of the family, and that's important.
Did you, you've worked in European TV as well. I guess this is a much different dynamic.
Yes, it really is. Well, I mean, the obvious one is the budget's way bigger, and Ted Lasso is an expensive show to make because of the many different elements and the huge cast. And so being able to spend money and being able to spend money properly was fantastic. You know, not having to cut your cloth every step of the way, which is what happens on our smaller budgets in the UK. You know, it's a question of cloth cutting and making it fit. It was fantastic to have the time and the luxury to be able to spend money on making it right.
Well, I think we're going to wrap things here. All 3 seasons of Ted Lasso currently stream on Apple TV+. Declan Lowney, congratulations on your Emmy nomination. I know it's not your first. Best of luck at the forthcoming Emmys, and thanks for joining us at Gold Derby.
Thanks so much, Ray. Delighted to help. Thank you. Take care.
You as well. I'm Gold Derby News and Features Editor Ray Richmond, and I'm welcoming Bryan Rowland, a director on the FX sports docuseries Welcome to Wrexham, to our Gold Derby Meet the Emmy Nominees TV Directors panel. So just quickly, for those who don't know, Welcome to Wrexham is an FX sports docuseries that follows actors Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney and their purchase in 2020 of a downtrodden Welsh football club and their subsequent attempts to resurrect it as its new owners. Bryan, you were nominated for your editing as well as directing on Wrexham, which is a little bit like what Ted Lasso would be if it were real. Would you agree?
Oh, I guess a little bit. Yeah, it's very surreal. This show is absolutely incredible. But yeah, as far as my involvement with it, it's unbelievable that I'm actually sitting here talking with you today. Very much, as the previous person said, it's very out of my comfort zone. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, well, we're going to make you comfortable. Don't you worry. Right now, you're going to be comfortable. Now, let's talk about the episode whose directing you were nominated for, Wide World of Wales, which brings me back to my Wide World of Sports days viewing as a child. It's pretty radically different, actually, than any other installment of the show. Describe it for us.
So yeah, it's really interesting, kind of my involvement with it, because like many others, I was kind of watching just the episodes were kind of coming in, they were being worked on, and then really out of left field, I got this. I've been working with Ryan, first of all, for years and years. I've been working with him heavily on promotional material, and then really out of nowhere, a few weeks before we were supposed to shoot this particular episode, that's when I was brought in with very, very short notice. And they threw a script my way, and I went, wait, Wide World of Wales? Wait, what is this? And I start reading through the script, just trying to see the nuts and bolts of what this is. And I'm seeing, okay, we need to build an ESPN set. Okay, we need to build a Tonight Show set. We need a cooking show set. We need to get these various guests on board. And I'm like, when are we shooting this? Oh, about 2 weeks. We got about 2 weeks. And so we had a very, very, very short runway to kind of get up and running. And basically, from what I understand, was while they were in the editing process of season 1, they realized, you know what, we really do need to get more context of what Wales is all about. And so they came up with this variety show of sorts, where we could have, through, you know, the lens of Ryan and Rob, kind of take us through what they understand about Wales and bring in different guests. We had Charlotte Church and I ran some different people. And then, of course, because I was brought in so late to do that, I executed, got it done. And again, for years, I've been doing a lot of the promotional work directly for Ryan. And my workflow usually is I go out, direct shoot, and then I edit and do all the posts. And I thought, sure, I could edit this thing, no problem. It's just an hour-long episode all by myself. And so that's what I did. And it just about killed me. And I remember turning over the hard drive and thinking, never again, never do this again. It was so brutal. And then I got a call later from George Dewey, who's one executive producer, saying, "Hey, do you want to be involved with season 2 at all? We really liked what you did, and Rob really liked working with you and this and that." And I said, "Sure, I'll be involved." But and now they've got me show running the show, along with Josh Driscoll, for season 2, and it's
I believe that's what is known as a promotion. Congratulations.
Yes, it was, but they were really sneaky in how they pitched it, because he's like, "No, you don't have to shoot anything, you don't have to edit anything," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, I could do that." And then on the call with Rob, it was, "Oh, here's the new showrunner." I'm like, "Well, what? How does this work?" So again, there's a lot of crossing the wake here as far as going from, I got my start doing documentaries. That's for years I did docs. And then I went from doing docs to promotional stuff where Bryan brought me in. And then I now am show running Wrexham, and it's just been absolutely amazing and terrifying.
That episode that you're nominated for, I mean, it's really very, very clever. Mock travelogue of the country of Wales. You know, it's like a cooking show, like you said, a Sports Center show, late night talk show, all rolled into one. And then you have Charlotte Church with this angelic voice kind of bringing the house down at the end. It's really deceptively very clever and very well done, and had to be a big challenge because it's like you're directing 5 things in one.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, this is like classic DNA from George and Ryan and from Rob. It's very out of left field, very bizarre, and I just remember in all the production, all the prep for the production, just how I just kept scratching my head, like how is this thing going to work? And I think it did. I think it came together really, really nicely, and I think it was well received and a lot of fun to work on. So
it's crazy that, you know, your fellow nominees in this directing for a reality program category, you're up against Queer Eye, Top Chef, Amazing Race, and RuPaul's Drag Race. A little bit of an apples and oranges thing.
Yeah, it really is. I'm a big fan of those shows, by the way. Yeah, but again, never. I can't emphasize enough just how surreal of a moment it is for me, coming from doing doc work to promotional work to just being asked to do this episode and then being able to sit here and talk with you today. So yeah, I think I'm the king of imposter syndrome. So I'm just gonna ride this while I can.
Well, the stuff you did with Ryan before was like satirical kind of shorts and things and promo thing, right? And Hugh Jackman, and you've got a great reel I saw.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
You know, and it's so basically there's a lot of commercial and promotional and marketing stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, again, I got my start in the documentary world, and I was working on a campaign for a number of years, and then the campaign dried up, and I remember my bank account just went to 0, and I was terrified. And I remember I had my camera with me, and I took my daughter out, and we shot a little short, and Blake Lively watched that short, and it changed my life, because Blake then introduced me to Ryan, that then brought me into the commercial side of things that really allowed me to kind of feed my family. And so since then, I was on and off involved with helping Blake and Ryan on a few projects. But then after a number of years, I got a phone call from Ryan saying, "Hey, I bought this gin company, and I want to do a promotional piece, and can you do it for me?" And so since then, that was just a number of years ago, it has been just this nonstop wild ride trying to keep up with Ryan Reynolds, where I find out along with everybody else, oh, he just got a gin company. Okay, well, oh, he just got a mobile company, Mint Mobile. He just bought Mint Mobile. Okay, and then I remember hearing the news. Oh, he just bought a soccer club, this Wrexham soccer club, and I thought, what is going on? Because I had heard that he had done it with Rob, and I was a big fan of Rob McElhenney. I've watched every episode of Sunny like 10 times, just embarrassingly. I was a huge fan of his. But I thought, Ryan is kind of a private guy, and this is a huge risk that he's taking, because worst case scenario, we're watching Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney very publicly potentially make the biggest financial mistake of their lives, also while harming a Welsh town. I mean, this is crazy. But then after just kind of diving into it and watching them and then how sincere they are about genuinely wanting to help this club and watching this town rally behind him it's taken like I've said so many times to my colleagues, it's taken my Grinch heart and made it grow, 3 times big. And they really have sincere intentions for helping out this club and this town. And I think the story speaks for itself. And when season 2 drops here in the next couple of weeks, I think everybody's in for a pretty wild ride. It's been amazing to watch.
Yeah, the thing that I was concerned about watching this, Bryan, was, that people could think that he was kind of mocking this town and mocking their team.
Yeah, right.
That he and Rob both were.
Right.
And but it really, it really doesn't. They're so self-deprecating, fortunately, that it doesn't really come across them.
Yeah. They're definitely the first to say, listen, we have no idea what we're doing. And they have been, there's an episode I'm working on now where yes, they're very self-deprecating, but yeah, they understand they've got a lot to learn, but they're very defensive about the town, and they're fiercely behind the cause and wanting to see this town honestly get promoted and have the best come to this place, because they have been in Wrexham. They really have been through quite a bit. There's been a lot of tragedy there, and it's a working class town. And I mean, we're talking about a town it's the 3rd oldest football club in the world, and they play at a stadium that is the oldest international stadium in the world that's still up and running. And so to say that this town believes in this football club, or they really are behind it, is a crazy understatement. This is the beating heart of this town. And so to see just the intent behind what Rob and Ryan are trying to do with this and trying to tell their story, and the stories that are there, it's so fun, because I get to go back to my early days of filmmaking and doing documentary work, where I just get to go around with a camera sometimes and just start talking to people on the street and really have them tell me these unbelievable stories of how the football club has really propped them up and kept them going. There's a lot of anecdotal things, but it's interesting even to hear Ryan talk about it, because it's almost like a church there in a sense, where, I mean, people have their ashes spread on the pitch, and it's a very unique thing to watch. And the responsibility there has been incredible as far as being able to tell the story and do it justice. So it's been for me personally, it's been like drinking from the fire hose and trying to keep up with all the different stories that we're trying to cover with the club, with the town, and then the reaction of the audience all over the world. So it's been a real privilege. So
it really does sound a little bit like you're describing Ted Lasso.
Yeah, it's crazy. My first day on the job was a week before. They said, "Hey, Bryan, we need you to come out and do the shoot." And it was I got to meet the King of England first day of the job and shake his hand and talk with him. It was just completely surreal, out of body, but amazing. So, and I think it shows that what they're doing is working over there, and it's bringing just this incredible positive light to what was a really what could have been a very, very sad story, but it's really been helping quite a bit with the town. So we're really happy with how the show's been received.
Well, that's inspiring. With that, we're out of time. Season 1 of Welcome to Wrexham currently streams on Hulu. Bryan Rowland, congratulations on your nominations. Best of luck at the forthcoming Emmys, and thanks for joining us at Gold Derby.
Thank you.
Welcome to this special Gold Derby Meet the Emmy Nominees TV Directors panel. I'm News and Features Editor Ray Richmond, and I'm joined today by the Fleishman Is in Trouble directing team of Valerie, Faris, and Jonathan Dayton, Brett Morgen, director of the David Bowie musical documentary Moonage Daydream, and Bryan Rowland, a director on the sports docuseries Welcome to Wrexham. Thank you for joining us. It's exciting to have you here. I'd like each of you to describe an instance in your career, whether on the project you were nominated for or a previous one, when something in a scene or a shot or an effect came alive on screen far better than you'd imagined it in your head, and what that felt like. And if you can't think of anything, don't worry, I have other questions. Valerie and Jonathan, let's start with you. And the two of you don't have to agree on any one thing, but you can if you want.
Oh, God.
I mean, each project has those moments. I mean, I'm
I
curious.
already mentioned one, you know, with Claire on Fleishman, but I feel like, you know, luckily, I think they happen a lot because we always love our cast. Like casting is sort of the most important part of our job, I think.
Well,
We're gonna,
I was just thinking, there's sometimes like a non-moment becomes really interesting. And there's a moment in episode 7 where Claire is eating a salad and she's, you know,
she's just had her total, you know, meltdown or
you know, this cathartic
yeah.
scream, and she's just going down this rabbit hole, and she's with her this guy she's having an affair with, and she's just silently eating a salad,
Taking really big bites.
And it is so funny and weird and, you know, loaded.
And he says, this place is so weird. And then she just keeps eating and
kind of
and
ignores
she
him.
gives this expression that is just, I don't know. It was one of those lines we didn't think was that, you know, we didn't really think the scene was even like, do we need this? But then she just turned it into something that cracked us up anyway. You know, I think maybe we laugh at more than
No, I
the
think
audience
it's
laughed
fun.
at, but
It's fun.
it was just
Sometimes the inside jokes are the best jokes.
yeah, it's just like her answer to him, you know, she didn't say anything back, but it was really just her state was so it just, you understood exactly.
You can make eating a salad a layered performance.
That's certainly how it is in my life. Brett, how about you?
I guess for me, the sort of moment that resonates with Moonage was for after about 6 months into the assembly, I went to Hawaii and decided to quarantine there during the pandemic, and I had this idea that I wouldn't come back until I finished the film, and so I had my Avid with me, and I'd literally sleep with it next to the bed or on the bed. And one morning I woke up at I think like 2 a.m, and I had this, I don't even know if it was an idea, but a feeling for the end of the film. Cut for 3 hours, went back to sleep, woke up, looked at what I had done, and that was the finished film. That was it. That was the last 15 minutes of the film, with very little maneuvering thereafter. So that it was the ultimate surprise and gift the next day.
Did you say you sleep with your Avid?
Literally, this way. I mean, I edited on my laptop, and I didn't have an additional monitor, so it was my laptop and a drive. Yeah.
Aha. Bryan, how about you?
For me, it's been more like, at least in my experience with just going out, because I lot when I'm out shooting, because I am constantly editing in my head, right? And so I feel like there's been a lot of situations where I've been out filming and I feel like, oh my gosh, this is the most incredible moment. This is the most incredible moment. And I'll come back and in the edit, it's just not clicking. And it's very different than what I felt like it was on set. But then there's just those hidden moments and just surprise moments that'll come out that have made at least the pieces I've worked on just really come alive, as far as just random things that you don't really even notice on set, but then it kind of really resonates more on screen than what you kind of noticed in person, if that makes any sense. I've just been surprised with how many times that's happened, where it's saved a scene or saved a sequence of something that I never really thought much about on set, but then coming back in the edit, it really helped make everything come together. I don't know if I can think of a specific time because it's happened so many times with me, but I think that's what I would go with.
That means you're successful when that happens a lot.
Yeah.
My next question is actually, what do people who aren't in the business or regularly on a set tend to get wrong about your job as a director? I mean, do they think you wear a beret and move around on a crane barking orders into a bullhorn? Let's start with you on this one, Bryan.
Well, in terms of nonfiction, and particularly in archival filmmaking, I've had several occasions where I've been talking about, going post-screening Q&As, and people say, well, what did you do? Meaning, if there's no actors to direct or there's no action, what is the role of the director in an archival film? So I think that's the great misconception, is that archival directors give all this footage to editors, and then sort of the editors give the film back, and you sort of shepherd it through, and nothing could be further from the truth. So to me, the role of director on archival is no different than a director in scripted. Particularly in the sense that every image that it was preconceived before it arrived here is birthed in my office. And so I could take a shot that the same way you can look at a house on set and you can make it a house for a setting for a horror film, or Rocco's Morning in America, Breakfast in America, depending on how you light it, how you frame it, everything else. I feel the same about ephemera. I feel the same about archival. And so, to me, in sound, particularly in archival, you're not following, particularly the way that I work, we're not trying to mimic the visuals on screen. We're creating a whole experience that's sort of asynchronous. So it's very hands-on. Moonage supervised every sound session from the first pre-dub to the last, and was present for all 650 hours of the color correct. Really kind of shaping it all the way through. So I think that's a great misconception, particularly with archival.
Bryan, how about you? What do people get wrong about your job when you're directing?
I think I've got a daughter that she's 19 years old, and she wants to be a director, and so she's come on set with me quite a bit, and I think she's always come away being really surprised with just the brute force amount of prep involved. And because along with being like the king of imposter syndrome, part of that's been amazing is I prep a lot, to the point where I know the exact lenses that I want. I know the frame rates, I know the type of cameras, I know the formats, I know the color correction, the way it's going to be graded, the music, a lot going into the shoot. And having that much prep and being able to present it in a way to a team, I think is really, really helpful to avoid what could be the endless phone calls and meetings, and being able to present it in a way where it's so crystal clear what your vision is, that your team there's no question from your team as far as how the execution is going to happen. And at least I learned that, at least on the commercial side of things, because the turnaround times were so insanely tight that there was no room for error as far as execution went. And so I think that at least that's what the answer, at least for my daughter, would probably tell you, is just the absolute, just the amount of prep. And the more clear you can be in prep, the more your vision is really going to come across on screen. So, and prep isn't sexy. Prep is not sexy, but it is so important.
Oh, absolutely. I think for every area of Hollywood, every area of working on a set. Valerie and Jonathan,
I would say,
do people think you guys are sitting in a chair with your name on it, just screaming at people?
not if they watch us. I don't think so. I don't know if we do a lot of sitting or screaming either, but I mean, I do feel like prep is a huge part of our job, and maybe even more so with two of us, because that's when we both might have a slightly different vision of what the film is. So we have to sort of merge those in prep. And I mean, I don't know what other people who don't know what directing is, what they think. I don't know how to answer that part of the question, but I feel like what it is just, endless decisions, just every little thing has to be is a decision, and it's endless. Like, I always feel like I still didn't get to, that we didn't get every little thing that we wanted, and I think, so I think it's like a race against time, and you're trying to, you are sort of trying, I guess it's a little bit of being somewhat controlling, like wanting to, have every little thing, get other people to do those things, but also want to bring in all the, how to best use the talent that you have brought to the project. That's another big, it's a lot of things.
I think though that the biggest misconception about directing is that directors sit on the set and direct everyone and direct the performances. I think that, for us, we prep, we know what we want, but in many cases we try and say as little as possible.
It's more like whisperers.
I think you want to make sure that everyone's headed in the direction that you want, but you want to leave room for accidents. You want to leave room for contributions that you never would have thought of. So, and
you also want to actually all that prep is so that you can be in the moment when you're shooting. I think that's the other thing is not getting too, stuck in what you thought you were going to get and actually be there to judge whether it's working. It's so much about, is this working? I feel like so many times we're on set and we're just going, it's not working. It's not, something's wrong with this scene or, and so then it's our job in that moment to figure out what's going to make it work. What's the thing that's not right. So I don't know. It is a weird and hard to kind of put into really strict terms what the role is, but it's a little like parenting, I say a lot, because you don't really make your kids, you are just sort of trying to help it along, help them, you have an idea of who they might be, but they surprise you, so I found that parenting and directing, I learned a lot that I could apply to each from,
But directing is easier.
Yeah.
I would think
it's a lot easier.
Much easier.
But and like parenting, though, directing, I would imagine people don't want to feel like they're being micromanaged. So it's really a fine line.
Yeah.
That's all the time we have. Congratulations to all of you on your Emmy nominations and good luck at the ceremony, whatever that may be. Directors Valerie Faris, Jonathan Dayton, Brett Morgen, and Bryan Rowland, thanks so much for joining us today at Gold Derby.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you guys, and
So much.
thank you, Ray. That was fun.
Thank you.